Good morning, Life Church. How are we doing? Good. I'm doing good. My name is Marina, if I've not met you. And it's great to be here this morning and share in the next part of our series, Pray. Like Pete said, we're doing this series, and I believe prayer is one of the most important things we have as Christians, right? And I think sometimes we take the gift that prayer is for granted. Sometimes we forget what price was paid so we have the free access we have to God. Because before Jesus died on the cross, prayer wasn't like we do right now, a conversation with God. It had to be done through the priests in the church. You couldn't just go and talk to God. You had to talk to someone who would intercede for you before God. Jesus died, so he gave his life so we can have free access to God right now. We can go to God and share with God how we're doing, what our emotions, what our needs. We can thank God. So prayer for me is not just an add-on to a Christian life. Prayer is an essential. You know, when you go running, I don't go running. Don't think, oh, she's talking about running. She does that. I don't. I can probably not run more than 20 meters, if that. No, 20 meters probably. But the thing is, when you go running or any other exercise or any other sport that you decide to do or you do, you need your equipment. And for running, for example, I believe trainers, the right trainers, not just trainers, you should have the right trainers. It's an essential. It's not something that you just decide, I'm going to run a marathon on my bare feet. It's not going to go well. You need your essential equipment. And prayer is one of the essential equipments that we have in our Christian life. It needs to be part of our day-to-day life. Our conversation, the relationship we build with God, we have with God through prayer, should be part of our everyday life. And today I just want to talk a bit about how Jesus modeled that and how, through prayer, what happens to us. Because prayer is something that it changes our lives. So we're gonna read from Mark 1, 32 to 39. And it says, that evening, after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. And we're going to focus mainly on 35. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. The creator of the universe, the Son of God, the one who had done all that we just read he did on the day before, got up, went to a solitary place, and prayed. Simon, Peter, and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby village, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So he traveled through Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and driving out demons. Let me just give you a bit of a context of what's happening here. So Mark is one of the most concise books of the Bible, and it's one of the smaller ones for reading that tells you the story of Jesus. So just in Mark 1, there's so much that happened. Before this here, there's what the author Mark is describing is the first day of Jesus' ministry. So what happens before is Jesus goes to the desert. He spends time with God in there. Jesus is baptized by John. Jesus calls the disciples. And as he calls the disciples, they go into mission. So this is the first day of Jesus' ministry. A pretty successful day, I would say. He did a lot of things. But I think that's also happening here is they do all that because they go to Peter's house. Peter's mother-in-law is ill. Jesus heals her. And then it always starts happening. Mark, because I feel like he's very succinct in all the information he gives us. He doesn't tell us, if they had a meal and Jesus went to sleep. But apparently, Jesus went to sleep. After a very long day of healing people, casting out demons, preaching the good news, having an extremely successful first day of ministry. But then in the next day, what happens? For a lot of us, I think, if I even put myself there, the next day I would think, let's go again. Let's go again. This is going great. First day, all this already happened. Let's go again. Jesus get up early. The early here, what the Bible means, is somewhere between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Very early. And he goes to a quiet place without telling anyone to take time to speak to his Father. And then you see Peter comes with all the needs. He's like, hey, the whole town came yesterday to my house. You've done all the things they've done. Everyone now is looking for you. Jesus, come on. What are you doing? You're wasting your time being by yourself when everyone is out there looking for you. Let's go again. You know, Jesus called them for mission. They just lived their first day with Jesus, and that's all happened. I don't judge Peter. It would be, let's go again. But Jesus tells Peter, no. We're going somewhere else. We're going somewhere else where I also need to preach because that's what I came for. You see, I love Jesus' answer because when you read and you study about Peter, I think Peter probably felt a bit like proud of, this is my house, right? The whole town is gathering in my house. They're seeing all these things happening, and they want more. It's kind of like fame started getting to his head. But Jesus doesn't do that. He stops and he goes and talks to the Father. Because Jesus' identity is not shaped or formed by the crowd or by his success. But it comes from his intimacy with the Father. You know, when John's baptizing Jesus, the Holy Spirit comes, and then a voice from heaven says, this is my Son, the whom I love, and I'm well pleased. Jesus had done 0 things at that point. But Jesus knew who he was. Jesus knew he was the Son of God. And he knew that to do the mission he was called to do, he needed the intimacy that he had with the Father. So after a successful day of ministry, he doesn't rest much, or what we call rest. And he doesn't just, let's go again. No, I'm going to stop. Because let me tell you, intimacy forms identity. You are who God says you are. But you can only be who God says you are and believe in that if you hear that from God. The world around us is ready to tell us who we are. The people around us are ready to tell us who we are. Your own desires, your own darkness, your own brokenness is ready to tell you who you are. You see, our identity can't be formed from the around or from the within. It has to come from above. And that above only comes when we spend time in intimacy with the Father. When we stop the noise around us. When we stop the crowd is speaking and is speaking. If it's either positive or negative. And we say, God, who I am. I can tell you, you are a child of God. I can tell you, you are loved. That will only sink in and become deep and truth when you hear from God, not from me. Anyone here can read the most beautiful Bible passage to you. But that will only become true in your heart, that certainty of who I am, when you hear from the Father. And I think that's why God did that way so important. Jesus, before you go and you do, you conquer death. Let me tell you, I'm already pleased. You are my son. So our identity, if you want to know who you are, if you feel like my identity has been shaped by what people told me, by what happened to me, by what I've done, or even by what I sometimes believe about myself, you need to stop, maybe get up early, and spend precious time with your Heavenly Father. He wants to tell you. He wants to reveal to you who you are. He wants you to not just believe it or know it because you heard it from someone, but because you say, God spoke to me. My Father shaped and marked in my heart who I am in that time of intimacy with Him. Jesus then, because He has His identity so firmed in His intimacy with the Father, you see how from that, it flows to His purpose. Because again, Jesus could easily just have gone back and let's continue doing. Because that was good. But purpose is only clarified. Intimacy clarifies purpose. So then when it's clarified, you go and do what God told you to do. The greatest or the biggest enemy in our life, of the greatest things in our lives, are the good things in our life. In that moment, Jesus had to say no to a good thing. You see, what Jesus was doing was incredible, and it was good. But He had to say no to a good thing so He could say yes to the God thing. And that's what happens in our lives. Sometimes our purpose, we're so lost, we are so not sure what we're here to do, or what am I meant to do, or am I called to do, that we let the need around us tells us how to live our lives. There's so much need. When we look around our church community, our town, the country, the world, there's so much need. But it's only from spending the time with God. Jesus goes that morning, reassures His identity, and He hears from the Father, you need to move on. You know, if you look at yesterday was good, but I have something else, so move on. Say no to that. So He goes to Peter and says, no, we are going somewhere else. What I had to done here, I know there is still a need, but I'm moving on because my Father told me to do so. So if you are lost, if you don't know what is your purpose in life, no one can tell you that. Don't let your purpose be shaped or be formed or be dictated by the need you see in front of you. First, hear from God. I'm not saying ignore needs. There's some needs that we need to act quickly. But don't shape your life or what you do with your life based on other people's need, based on all the world needs. Take the time. God, who am I? God, what am I here to do? When you Google, or if you now, a bit cooler, you ask ChatGPT, what are the two most asked questions in life? And that's not the Christians asking, it's the whole world asking. Is, who am I and what am I here to do? When you read this passage and you see what Jesus is doing, Jesus is giving you the recipe to find the answers. Jesus is giving you the two biggest questions we have in life, humanity has in life. You know, it's not just a Sunday school answer. Jesus has the answer, but He does give us the recipe here for the answer. Because it's also individually. That's why I don't think Jesus went around saying everything. But Jesus is saying, hey, I got up, the creator of the universe, your creator, but I got up early and I spent time with my Father. So I would be reassured in who I am and I would know my purpose. Who am I to do different and think I can keep going? Who am I to give voice to the world around me to shape that in my life? But that will only happen when we stop, when we prioritize our time with God. You know, I want to say it with the most love in my heart. I don't care how busy your diary is. If you are not prioritizing God in your diary, something is wrong. Because you can't go. It's an essential. That time with God is an essential for Christian life. It's like to run a car. What do we need? Fuel. Or maybe you have an electric car now and you just say, I don't need fuel, but you need something to run a car. And as running a car, in life we also have this. There's two types of people. I need to fill it up. It's 3/3 full, but you're already thinking, no, I need to fill my car up. I don't want to let it get too low. Or you are the person on the other side. I know my car. I know you can go another 50 miles with that red light flashing. And they are usually married to each other. I'm not going to tell you who am I and who my husband is, but I've heard a few times, we need to get fuel. No. We can drive another 50 miles with the light flashing. And my heart is pounding like, we cannot do that. Anyway, sometimes we treat our intimacy with God like that. You think you can keep going. You think you know best. Because that's our reaction. We think we know better than Jesus. That was the creator of the world and he stopped to fill himself up so he could go and give out. And we think we know. You know, you can't run on empty. It will catch up with your heart. It will. I had a time in my life, and I was about 25. And let me tell you, I was a Christian my whole life. At the age of about 25, I was leaving full-time ministry. I was preaching the gospel every day to kids and to young people. I was what I could think one of the pinnacle of my ministry. But because I got so busy with the ministry, I didn't have time for God. I had time to plan what I was going to do for ministry, but I didn't have time to, God, I'm sorry, I have to get up every day 6 a.m. and I'm getting home about 11:30. I'm tired, I need to sleep. And I thought, I can keep going. I can keep going. I can keep going. I was running on empty. And I got to probably the darkest place I could be. I was in ministry. I was preaching. I was doing all that I thought it was the good things. But then it got to the point that I realized I didn't know who I was. I didn't really know what I was doing, if it was just to please people. I had let my identity be shaped by what people had said to me or what had happened to me. And I had to stop completely to look after myself, to refill, to spend a lot of time with God, to then be, I know who I am now. God, I've heard from you. What people have done to me has nothing to do with who I am. What happened to me in the past, what people said to me, people that were meant to be encouraging and helping me grow, the awful stuff they said to me or they said about me that so far I have believed, that's not who I am. And you know, I would preach to the kids and say, you're a child of God, you're a loved one. But I knew deep down that I doubted that about myself. But it was only in the time that I said, God, my intimacy with you is more important. Because I cannot run on empty. I cannot give what I have not got. That my life was changed. And that time, that intimacy with God saved me. So you can be a Christian for many years. We can be Christians for years and years. And keep thinking, I can keep going. Just a bit more. I know what I'm doing. You don't know how many times I've read the Bible. You don't know how many times I have preached. But you don't stop. You don't refill so you can keep going. We think we know best. And Jesus set an incredible example when he stops to do that. You know, people that designed New York, Manhattan, they got a bit of the idea. Got a picture of Central Park. Central Park is 843 acres. I don't know what that means. I know it's massive. Sorry, Brazilians do kilometers or meters, whatever. Anyway, it's very big, as you can see. And the beauty of Central Park is you can see that it's surrounded by buildings, by sky-high buildings. It's considered one of the busiest cities in the world. But Central Park is there. And it was intentionally designed to be there. Central Park is not an accident. When they started building the city around it, they said, we're going to keep this. Because if we don't have a place where people can refresh, can see nature, can connect with themselves, the city will eat itself up. If we don't do that, the business will kill people. The traffic, the noise, everything else will kill people. So it was kind of a statement of we're going to keep this here so people are forced to slow down. Yeah. Or so people look at it and they remind themselves, I need to slow down. Yeah. That is not just a reality for Manhattan, it's a reality for us. What is your Central Park? The business around you, the need around you, the people around you. If you don't say, God, I am going to prioritize my time with you, it will eat you up. It will eat up your time, your energy, your faith, and everything. What is your Central Park? When are you stopping? When are you prioritizing God in your life? When you plan your diary, do you sit and say, before I fill it up with everything else, all the needs that I know, if you have kids, then it's even more. But say, first of all, let me kind of put the God time. God should be in everything, but the time that I stop intentionally should go to the quiet place to have intimacy with my Father. And the beauty of that is when you do that, that changes you. When you have your identity revealed by the above, your purpose set by the Father, that changes you. It changes lives. And for the people that like sometimes, but prove that to me, that it actually works. I can prove to you. So, I can. So the organization called, let's find the name of the organization, Bible Engagement. Organization called Bible Engagement, they did a research. And in this research, they interviewed over 100,000 people and in 24 different countries to give a good spread around the world. So it's not an American research, it's not a British research, it's a research that was done all over the world. And what they did with Christians all over the world, or people that were becoming Christians. And they were trying to figure it out, what happens when people engage with the Bible and in prayer. What happens when people have that time of intimacy with God? What happens in their lives? Does it actually bring any change? Does it actually make any difference? And what they found is that when you engage with God, when you spend that time of intimacy with the Father, 1 or twice a week, it makes a bit of a difference, but it's nearly to nothing. But then, what they found, and they call it the power of 4, is when you do that 4 times or more a week, it brings drastic change. I said I would prove to you. I'll give you a few numbers. I haven't put all of them up. You can look up the research. But people that engage and had time with God more than 4 times a week, drinking into excess, reduced minus 62%. Viewing pornography, reduced to minus 59%. Lashing out in anger, minus 31%. Feeling bitter, minus 40%. Thinking destructively, minus 32%. Struggling to forgive, minus 31%. Loneliness went down by minus 30%. Anxiety, minus 14%. And then I wanted to add 2 positives there, not that the other ones are negative, but they're all good. But people that spend time with God more than 4 times a week, 4 or more, sharing their faith with others grew by 228%. And discipling others, raising fully devoted followers of Jesus, it's what we are all about here. It went up by 231%. Spending time with the Father shapes who we are, reveals to us who we are, sets our purpose, and brings transformation that can change the world. The power of 4, I think, was a lesson that disciples learned very quickly in the second day of ministry. That they needed to stop, to spend time with the Father, to refill so they could keep going. But you might be here this morning and you're thinking, I don't even know where to start. I've never even done that. It's my first time here. I'm still trying to think about God. The intimacy, this relationship that can reveal to us our identity and our purpose, it starts with our first yes to Jesus. It's when you say, I'm trying this out. I'm trying faith. I'm trying God. And you're saying, but I want that. I want the answers for the most you ask questions. It starts with first saying, yes, I want you. So I'd love to ask the church to close your eyes. And if you're here this morning and you feel like, I want to say my first yes to Jesus. I want to invite Jesus into my life. Maybe you're relating to one of the things that I said, it changed, it has people had more intimacy with God. Or maybe you're just saying, I just need to know who I am. What am I here for? And I want to say yes to Jesus. I'd love to ask you to raise your hand. We're now going to point you out. I just want to know, who am I praying for? There's just a couple of leaders around to pray for you. You have an opportunity this morning to say, Jesus, I want to say yes to you. I need you in my life. God, we thank you that you give us an opportunity to have free relationship with you. And you invite us into a relationship that completely changes who we are, what we do, how we live. Thank you for the people this morning making the commitment to say, I want you in my life. Would you come, Jesus, and touch them with your love? Church, I want to ask a few people you might feel that, and it's something that it might take a bit to be a bit brave. But you might be hearing me speaking here and you're thinking, I need to be refilled. I'm trying to run on empty. And the result of that, you might be feeling lost. You might be feeling, or even you're thinking, actually, I've been a Christian for so many years, but I don't really know if I know who I am. And you want to say, God, I want that intimacy with you. I want your voice in my life. I want your touch in my life. God, I'm tired to go on my own. I need you. God, I'm tired to just listen to the people around me and not give you the time so you could speak to me. I'm going to ask you to stand up so I can pray for you. Thank you, Jesus. There's not any at all shame in saying, God, I've been running on my own, but I want to refill me. God, reveal yourself to me. Reveal to me who I am, who you created me to be. God, I thank you for my brothers and sisters that have stood up to say they need you. We can't do these things called life without knowing who we are in you, who you created us to be. God, I pray that the people that need that revelation, that you would speak to them. I pray, God, that people may be making the commitment to say, I'm going to commit to this life of having a time of intimacy with my Father, of prayer, of reading my Bible, of listening to Him. God, that you would speak to them through that. And God, I pray for my brothers and sisters that might be feeling tired, might be feeling lost. Would you come, Holy Spirit? Would you fill us? Would you empower us so we can go and live a life that is changed us, but it's also a life that changed the world around us? Would you come?